Let's talk about other American politicians and influencers and so on. Today we will talk about United States, mostly. In the end of the video I'll tell a couple words about Canada.
Quid pro quo.
Tucker.
Because people are dying on the front lines. You think it's a joke?
Why do I care? Why do I care what's going on in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
Hello everyone, I'm Elena, welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. Please like, subscribe, share, write comments. Let's make truth available for everyone. This is what helps to promote it on YouTube. Thank you. This is Mike Johnson, the man who isn't even a president of the United States, yet he holding hostages both parties just because Trump snapped his fingers and told him not to go for it. For example, deal with the border and stuff like that. So for decades, the deal there wasn't a big problem, or it wasn't that important problem that nobody could solve it, neither Democrats nor Republicans. And now Johnson is trying to hold Ukraine hostages. And what I showed you in the end of the 2023 in December, the bombing of Ukraine and stuff like that, I wonder how these people are sleeping at night, knowing that they deliberately delayed help to Ukraine. And before it was such a big deal border, as soon as Democrats agreed, said, okay, yes, let's have a deal. Now he is backing up, and all that bureaucrat has to do is just schedule a vote, which majority of both parties would vote to help Ukraine. Because these are who real American people are. I met Americans. They are good people. They know what Ukraine is fighting for. It's not just their freedom. It's democracy, and our democracy. And Putin is the biggest threat at this point in time. Every smart person understands that, because we're standing on the brink of World War III and nuclear war. Because of Putin. Nobody else's fault. Putin started it in 2014 for no reason whatsoever. And these guys are either stupid or ignorant or corrupt. They're your politicians, you deal with them and find out why. So this little bureaucrat holding hostages the whole country, United States, holding hostages Ukrainians. Russian people are dying every day on the front because Putin's throwing them in. Many of them wasn't even asked to be there. And it all depends on the foreign help. Yes, Ukraine gonna fight no matter what, with help or without. But it would be easier and less people would have been killed. This is Ukrainian family who just get killed in Kharkiv, where my friends are living, because of Russian drone attack. There is an excellent channel of Jake Bro, where he is explaining really well why that deal wasn't made, why the problem wasn't solved in the past, and so on. So you're welcome to watch this. It would really tell you how it is. Meanwhile, surprise, surprise, Mike Johnson's campaign contributions from company tied to Russia. You're welcome to read this, and so on. So maybe there's also quid pro quo. It's up to you to decide. You are an American, so you deal with your politicians. A group of Russian nationals were able to donate to newly elected House Speaker Mike Johnson's campaign in 2018 by funneling the money through US company. This is another article about Speaker Johnson and his campaign contributions from company tied to Russia and Putin's friend and so on. So you're welcome to read it yourself. I'll give the link down below. He is talking about Lauren Boebert, American politician.
And in fact, when they did do something corrupt, evil, embarrassing, stupid, violent, or they lied, they resigned.
He's implying what happened to America when American government people did something wrong. They resigned in the past. Not happening that anymore. This is just another example of family values, which Putin is proposing as well. The guy who having lovers, mistresses, and bunch of children from his mistresses, even during when he was married. So she has lots of family values too. Vaping in the theater in Colorado, giving a hand job to the guy, and so on. So these are lowlifes who supporting Putin and war in Ukraine, demanding that, oh, church shouldn't be separate from the state. This is exactly why it's supposed to be separate from the state. So some lunatics who believe in some nonsense dictate normal people who are actually guided by laws of nature, laws of science, laws of physics, and so on. Do not put hot water, boiling water from the kettle on your head because you're gonna burn yourself, because this is the law of physics. And no matter how much you dance around that kettle, it's not gonna get cold all of a sudden. If it boiled and you pour it on yourself, you're gonna get hurt. This is why the laws of nature, the laws of physics, and the laws of economics are working that way. This is why Russian economy is in such a bad condition. Because no matter what Putin does, no matter what he says, no matter how much he order economy to be great, it's never gonna be. Because there are laws of economics. And this moral person stands with President Trump. In Russia we have a saying, tell me who is your friend, and I will tell who you are. And another proof of that, she's with that Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She calls herself Christian and mother, and American, and so on. And saying about freedoms, never give up our freedoms. Meanwhile, she's supporting Trump and supporting Putin and denying help to Ukraine. Jake Bro correctly called Marjorie Traitor Greene because she supports Putin, she supports Trump, and she supports Russian aggression in Ukraine. These women probably slept at night very well, and Marjorie Traitor Greene has children of her own, as far as I heard. I don't know much about them, and their personal life is absolutely irrelevant and doesn't interest me whatsoever. But the point is, while Ukrainian children were bombed on 29th of December, these women were sleeping fine and they denying them help. This is from the channel of Jake Bro. This is Ukrainian family who just get killed in Kharkiv because of Russian drone attack, while Americans playing their political games and Marjorie Traitor Greene supporting them. This was 35 years old Olga, who was on maternity leave, and she has 10-month-old Pavlo, who buried with her in the same grave. Her husband died, and another 2 boys. One was 7 years old and another one almost 4. This is what Russia has done. The funeral of that Putyatin family in Kharkov. Youngest boy was just a baby. And that's what happened. You're welcome to watch that. I'll give you the link and so on. 14 homes were on fire. 3,700 square meters. 7 civilians died. 3 children among them. And this woman, Marjorie Traitor Greene, called herself a mother. Meanwhile supporting Trump and supporting all that delaying help for Ukraine. And I'm not even saying in this video much about Kharkiv was bombed and many other cities was bombed on 29th of December. All over Ukraine. Maternity hospitals, everything. You are welcome to show this to your politicians, to her, and ask how is she sleeping at night. Ask your politicians, ask Trump how he feels that whole families were burnt alive in Kharkov. How do they sleep at night? How Trump is sleeping at night? Another Putin's puppet and traitor to America, Tucker Carlson. And he is in Russia right now. In the country who started and continuing for over about almost a decade genocidal war in Ukraine and full-scale invasion for 2 years, murdering Ukrainian people. And enemy. The country is an enemy of the United States. And this guy went to Putin. This is the opinion on Tucker Carlson by Anne Applebaum, which is extremely honorable and good person. Great scientist, historian, who actually know Russian, who spent time in Russian archives and Soviet archives when they opened up. Wrote a brilliant book about Gulag, Russian prisons and so on. The person who actually know what is happening, actually know Russia, and know a lot of things was done by USSR and Russia. Tucker Carlson has been useful to Viktor Orban, the dictator of Hungary, because he helps him hide his corruption behind the veil of culture war, as I wrote in September, reposting because Carlson is in Moscow, doing the same favor for a much bloodier, more dangerous autocrat. This is a useful article you're welcome to read yourself. Tucker Carlson is only one part of Putin's disinformation war in Western media. Practically everything Carlson says is a lie. And I could go on and on and on disproving it one by one by one by one. But you're welcome to read it for yourself. And I want to underline that Carlson lies all the time. About everything. And off the air, Fox News stars blasted the election fraud claims they peddled. Practically all of them. Not practically all of them. In this article you can find out about this more. And you can find out from transcripts how much Tucker Carlson, despite that he says that he's pro-Trump, despises Trump. How much he's against Trump. How much he hates Trump. Which is for a reason. But for the money, he was continuing praising Trump and spreading out his lies. As much as he now spreading lies of Putin. This is another post of Bill Browder, which I agree with. I wish people would stop referring to Tucker Carlson as a journalist. A journalist is someone who is objective. Tucker Carlson has an agenda, and brazenly lies to support that agenda. His lies cost Fox News $787 million. His work in Moscow for Putin will cost the world far more than that. I agree.
Because people are dying on the front lines. You think it's a joke?
Why do I care? Why do I care what's going on in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? And I'm serious. Like, why do I care?
I'll tell you why.
And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
Because those of us who are watching, myself, who think preserving democracy is important. When Dick Cheney said what the Russians did was an attack,
I don't care.
It was a warlike attack on the U.S., and I think if Donald Trump gets off the hook on this, he's going to put the arm on the Chinese and everybody else.
So Tucker Carlson doesn't care that it's Russian attack, not only on Ukraine. It's Russian attack on everything. Include property you possess. Include for what you worked all your life. So if there are no international laws, if there are no laws at all, any country, any person who can come and grab everything they want. This was happening centuries ago. That's what the world get rid of. They installed the laws for the reason. And in the United States, in Canada, in every democratic country, property is protected. Rights of people protected. In Russia, it isn't. And I proved it to you in this video. Whatever happening in Russia, if Putin succeeds in Ukraine, he will go further. And the United States eventually would be next. This is why the war in Ukraine is very important. The nuclear arsenal in Russia is big. And if at least few of the nukes still working, they can reach United States. This is why. Americans without diplomatic immunity working in the interests of the United States who step foot in Russia tend to get arrested and imprisoned on fabricated charges. Like, for example, Evan Gershkovich, I can add from myself to this. Tucker Carlson is in Moscow receiving VIP treatment from the Kremlin regime. So another disgusting lowlife which Russia embrace, like it's embrace every disgusting lowlife who's supporting Putin's propaganda and genocidal war in Ukraine. I wonder how they sleep at night. I agree. Now that Tucker Carlson is in Moscow would be the perfect time to revoke his US citizenship. Yeah, maybe he should go to the war in Ukraine to support Putin there. Everything Putin and Carlson saying in this clip is a lie. But you're welcome to watch it.
I haven't seen anybody do that.
The West started the war and we used force in order to stop it.
If there is any single American who deserves scorn and, yes, blame for the invasion of Ukraine, it would be Joe Biden.
The Ukrainian people have become hostages of their Western masters.
Ukraine is not a democracy. It's a client state of the Biden administration.
The U.S. were training on the future theater of military actions by owning biological laboratories in Ukraine.
Military biological programs are under development in Ukraine, financed by the U.S. defense ministry.
Western countries were setting military bases on our border.
The Russians don't want American missiles on their border. They don't want a hostile government next door.
NATO took specific actions, expansions to our borders.
Getting Ukraine to join NATO was the key to inciting war with Russia.
The elites of the West are not hiding their goals. They are trying to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia.
The Biden administration wanted all along a regime change war against Russia.
The initiators of the sanctions are punishing themselves.
So it's not Vladimir Putin who's getting punished, it's American citizens. It's you.
The West provoked the growth of prices in their own countries, collapse of energy sector.
Gas prices are already the highest they have ever been in history. So the price of natural gas and the price of electricity and food and everything else you buy.
I think we should probably take the side of Russia if we have to choose between Russia and Ukraine. That is my view.
We're on Putin's side.
As I proved to you, none of this is true. Biden wasn't even president when Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014. Period. And everything else is as much lie as I said to you in the beginning. So this is what Carlson is supporting. This is made up Putin's lies. Putin attacked Ukraine, not the West. And I have whole videos about NATO, especially truth and lies about NATO. You're welcome to watch when Putin himself is saying that it's no big deal if Ukraine join NATO. Later on he said no big deal if Finland and Sweden will join NATO, and so on. And Russia wanted to join NATO. So none of this is true. Yet Tucker Carlson is spreading that lie. Meanwhile, American traitor Tucker Carlson showed up in Russia, interviewing Putin, and started lying even before the interview started, by saying that, oh, nobody wants to interview Putin, I am the only one. Turned out to be was disproved even by Peskov and Kremlin, saying that lots of people want to interview Putin. They're just not gullible, useful idiots. That's why they're not allowed to interview Putin. So I might make a video about it, but I haven't bothered to watch it. And I think Jake Broad did a great job to explaining that, and many other people. And it was failure on both sides. And in a way, I'm grateful to Tucker Carlson to show in this interview, especially on banned in Russia Twitter, which is a fascist and horrible thing to be on. And that's why it's forbidden in Russia, according to Putin. Both of them was look bad on the interview. Putin tried to insult and showing weak Tucker Carlson, and showing how much Russia is so more grandiose and he is nobody, basically. For the pleasure of Russian audience, insulting an American, how wonderful. And Tucker Carlson basically showed Putin for who he is. Old man from the bunker who doesn't know history and trying to invent stuff, even knowing that everybody in the world know about it, and it's not gonna work for anybody. Giving a lecture for half an hour about fake history Putin just invented. Yet Tucker Carlson didn't basically say anything, didn't contradict Putin. Especially when Putin basically admitted that Hitler was right about invading Poland, using the arguments of rapist. Well, it was her fault, I just had to do it. So Hitler had to attack Poland. And meanwhile saying that, yeah, Evan Gershkovich, American journalist, is a hostage in Russia. And if you're being nice to us, maybe we'll release him, but if not, well, Putin basically admit that the fellow journalist, Evan Gershkovich, is a hostage, Russian hostage, who was arrested by political reasons and pretended he is a spy. But I kinda give Tucker Carlson a credit that he even brought up the question. I wasn't thinking he gonna dare. Look how much Tucker Carlson admires Putin, Russian dictator, who keeping Russia in line for 24 years by murdering, torturing people, destroying constitution and law, like a mafia state. This is what he is admiring.
Simply the leader of the country, who of course is impressive. It's the largest landmass in the world. And it's wildly diverse, linguistically, culturally, religiously. It's hard to run a country like that for 24 years, whether you like it or not. So an incapable person couldn't do that. He is very capable, and many of you know him, and you know that. What was radicalizing, very shocking, and very disturbing for me was the city of Moscow, where I'd never been, the biggest city in Europe, 13 million people. And it is so much nicer than any city in my country. I had no idea My father spent a lot of time there in the 80s when he worked for the US government and barely had electricity.
That isn't true. Neither one. First of all, in the 80s, Moscow did have electricity, and it was big city and the biggest in Russia. And everything from Russia and USSR was dragging into Moscow, and Moscow was the wealthiest place. And number two is, he must have haven't seen cities in North America. I personally traveled through 42 states of the United States. And I have seen a lot of big cities, and many of them very beautiful and gorgeous cities. And in any other countries as well. And keep in mind that Moscow is way older than any city in North America as a country.
And now it is so much cleaner and safer and prettier aesthetically, its architecture, its food, its service, than any country, city in the United States that you have to, and this is non-ideological. How did that happen? How did that happen? And at a certain point, I don't think the average person cares as much about abstractions as about the concrete reality of his life. And if you can't use your subway, for example, as many people are afraid to in New York City because it's too dangerous, you have to sort of wonder, like, isn't that the ultimate measure of...
First of all, no, it's not the ultimate measure. Second of all, have you been in metro in New York? I have. New York is one of the friendliest, big cities I have ever been. You hardly even have a chance to stop and open the map before somebody of New York people appear beside you and offer you help. And yes, I used metro in New York. It's not as glorious and beautiful in Moscow metro, but it's normal metro. I perfectly fine traveled with a child and a family through New York metro. So if you paranoid people afraid of using metro, that's nothing to do with Putin or Russia or anything like that. And Trump is steering fear in Americans that much that people in Iowa, of all places, afraid of immigrants. Unbelievable. If Tucker Carlson is thinking that he's seen a real Moscow, he's very much mistaken. He only was seeing, like in the USSR, what he allowed to see. And I want to add some exclusive thing about it. Nobody else will tell you about this because they don't have that kind of experience. I personally saw the FSB coming to my university and recruiting students, especially good students who knows English, to be representatives of Soviet Union, to meet foreign people who come into my city of Volgograd. These people were supposed to walk in pairs, boy and girl, pretend that they are boyfriend and girlfriend, just saying that they are. So in case foreign people who show up in Volgograd and wanted to meet foreigners, they could see good Soviet people and meet good Soviet children, basically. And if they decided to invite them in the hotel for a cup of coffee or some exchange of souvenirs, it would have looked appropriate. And nothing sexually would be, nobody would think about it, because they kind of couple, and some other, for example, elderly couple came to see Volgograd. They would like to meet these young people. It would be appropriate to come and visit. And up to that extent, Soviet government lied to foreign people who is during perestroika coming to see Russia. They really thought that they will see real Russia and they will see average Russian people. Average Russian people wasn't even allowed to talk to foreigners. They wouldn't even talk to foreigners. And when he talking about safety in Moscow, it's just outright disgusting. I just saw one other Putin's puppet showing up with his Russian girlfriend, probably from FSB, walking in Moscow and saying, oh, how safe it is, how wonderful. And we could see, just literally see in his video, that right behind them, there are two guys walking like a bodyguards, which is probably from the FSB. So if you're telling me, a Soviet and Russian person who came from the USSR and Russia, that somebody allowed him, Tucker Carlson, famous American, walk around Moscow without KGB following him step by step to at least to make sure nothing happened to him, of course he felt very safe, because he has guards walking after him. Even if he didn't notice them, it doesn't mean that they were not there. They were. I can guarantee you that, 100%. Nobody would allow him to go alone around, wandering around Moscow and see whatever he wants to see. He only saw what he was showed. So, I have seen those useful idiots before in my past, And Volgograd isn't even Moscow. It's also 1 million people. It's 1 million people city. It's a capital of the region. But in Moscow, it's way worse. Besides, in USSR, foreign people could only live in certain hotel, which called in tourist, which is mean иностранный турист, foreign tourist. And that was completely under the wing of the KGB at the time, who was watching every single foreign tourist coming to the USSR, which wasn't all that many. Now there are many coming. You can't really put KGB officer to everyone, but to Tucker Carlson they really, really will, and they did. So here's to the talks about safety. And besides, I was walking with my family and a child in the middle of the night in New York City, and nothing happened to us. It's perfectly safe. Otherwise, we wouldn't have done that. So maybe Americans should be less paranoid about their safety. Many of them living in the safest country in the world. One of the safest countries. Well, Canada is probably safer. Or some other countries. But at least I traveled through 42 states. And most of the time, I hardly ever felt unsafe. Maybe a couple moments where it was kind of... but most of the places, there was no problem whatsoever. That is why, if Tucker Carlson really that useful idiot, but I think he's smarter than that. He's just lying. And pretending for Putin, and for Putin's sake. Promoting Putin. In fact, America is way safer place, and Canada, for that matter, than many places in Russia. If not for his KGB bodyguards, I mean FSB nowadays, he wouldn't feel all that safe among Russian people who actually, some of them really hate Americans because they told that it's America who started this war and killing people in Russia. And it's American President Biden who is guilty that Russian entrances in Russian buildings, some people stealing light bulbs and peeing in these places because there are no public toilets around and people have to do it somewhere. So they do it in the entrances of the apartment buildings if there is no code lock on the door. But Russians probably thinking it's American president personally coming to Russia and peeing in their apartment buildings entrances. So please, Americans, tell your presidents, stop coming to Russia and peeing in our apartment buildings. That would be very nice. This reposted by Bill Browder, who knows exactly what Russia is. And I can't say it better than him. Tucker, Moscow hasn't been safe for my friend Sergei Magnitsky, Boris Nemtsov, or Vladimir Karamurza. Or Navalny, I would add, whose lives has been destroyed for criticizing Putin. If you are Russian and say the same things about Putin that you said about Biden, you will already be 6 feet under. Or nowhere in Siberian jail like Navalny. Or 7 years in jail like Sasha Skachelenko, who just put in the market, she put price tags with information about the war in Ukraine. She got 7 years in jail. Wow, how safe country Russia is. Unbelievable. And Tucker Carlson must have haven't stepped a foot outside of Moscow, or he would see outdoor toilets, broken streets, and people living in poverty. So, this is complete propaganda lie. This is all what you need to know at this point in time about Tucker Carlson and his visit to Moscow. And the cherry on top. As Jake Bro said in the past, Tucker Carlson went to Moscow probably because he couldn't receive his payments from Russia because of the sanctions. So he had to go there in person and pick up bricks of cash, which Russian government is paying, Putin's government is paying Tucker Carlson to betray his country. And we have the proofs now. Here's Tucker Carlson working hard for Russian pays or any other favors he received from Russia. Working hard to prove his new master Putin that he is loyal servant. The United States Senate passed $60 billion bill in military assistance for Ukraine. The military aid package now has to be scheduled for vote by Speaker Johnson in the House of Representatives to pass, which he wouldn't because Trump told him not to. So Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing everything they can to stop this bill in the House to help Russia win this war. This is post Elon Musk is spreading a Tucker Carlson interview
It became very clear to anyone paying attention several months ago that Ukraine cannot win its war against Russia. The Ukrainian military will not be able, even with Western backing, hundreds of billions of dollars of it, to expel the Russian military from parts of eastern Ukraine.
This is actually not true. Ukraine actually winning the war right now. And if Tucker Carlson believed Putin all of a sudden, or that blind, or that stupid, or that corrupt, well, it's his own fault. Ukraine is winning that war, and it can win, and it will win, because Ukraine doesn't have any other choice. Ukraine either win or die. This is how it is. And I proved it on my channel many times.
Russia has 100 million more in population than Ukraine does. And that means that further support from the West for the Ukrainian military only means more dead Ukrainians and a further degraded Western economy in the US.
This is a lie as well. Yes, Russia has more people, but they don't have weapons enough. They don't have enough to arm them, and if Ukraine will get enough weapons, they can and they will defeat Russia. And absolutely opposite of what he said, that Putin doesn't want peace. Putin will not stop. Putin wants ceasefire to bring more Russian troops on the front and kill more Ukrainians, and more Russians will die. And he is proving it right now, storming little town of Avdiivka near Donetsk, which is he is trying to do for 10 years. And they can't capture that city. All Russian might, with all Russian troops, cannot capture a little city for 10 years. And now, because Putin wants to be so-called re-elected, which isn't even a real election in any way, but for him to get at least something to show that he captured something, right now over 10,000 Russians already dead, maybe even around 20, I'm not sure. Only around Avdiivka alone. And Putin keeps throwing them in the meat grinder, and he will keep throwing them. And stopping helping Ukraine will only mean more dead Ukrainians. And more dead Russians. Whatever Carlson said is a lie. It's a Putin's propaganda, and he is spreading it. This is exactly what Putin wants.
So it's not simply a fool's errand, it's self-destruction. It's insane, it's cruel, it's abetting the killing of an entire generation of Ukrainians.
That is another lie. And I provided you the plan, Putin's plan, what will happen to Ukraine. I have the whole video about it. Putin wants to kill Ukrainians and want to go further than Ukraine and keep killing people. That is why all the countries around Ukraine wanted to join NATO. That is why Finland joined NATO, and that is why Sweden is joining NATO. That is the only why. So the more ceasefires, which was proven, again, you can watch my video about Donbass, what Russian ceasefire means. Ukraine will cease fire and Russia will keep killing Ukrainians. And only idiot can believe Putin and agree with him on anything after what Putin has done in Ukraine. Ukraine isn't stupid. That's why they will keep fighting, because they either fight or die. And typical Russian propagandist move. No honest person will deny that it's very obvious. No, it isn't obvious. It's a lie. That's why every honest person will deny it. That's exactly why.
And yet somehow the United States Senate, which is always several years behind reality in its perceptions, just a few weeks ago, decided to send another $60 billion to the Ukrainian government, which is both corrupt and authoritarian.
This is not true either. No, Ukrainian government isn't corrupt and isn't authoritarian.
They've canceled elections.
No, they didn't cancel the elections. If he knows the laws of Ukraine, when the country is at war, elections are postponed for several reasons. One of them is millions of Ukrainians left the country, and millions are on the front. They cannot vote, it's not possible to organize. And only an idiot or corrupt politician and corrupt Russian propagandist would lie about that.
They banned an entire Christian denomination, and then they killed an American journalist for noting any of this.
And who is they killed, I wonder? Where are the proofs? As to the Christian denomination, this is a lie as well. Yes, they going after Russian Orthodox Church. It's because, if you watched my video, you would know why. Because Russian Orthodox Church, it's the FSB representatives in every country, include Ukraine, especially in Ukraine. These people from the church were caught with Russian money and Russian weapons and Russian everything, with basically fifth column inside your country who is fighting a war. In case Mr. Carlson forgot, Ukraine is fighting a war, the bloodiest war since 1945. That is why the country defending itself. And the Patriarch Kirill personally, former FSB officer, and previous Russian Patriarch as well. That is why Russian Orthodox Church is really in a conflict with Ukrainian Orthodox Church right now. It's because it's Russian FSB in the country which Russia trying to kill and attacked unprovokedly since 2014 and fighting a war which is in 20th of February of this year would be 10 years.
And yet, the United States Senate proposed under Mitch McConnell a plan to send another $60 billion to Ukraine. Well, imagine the surprise of all rational people around the world to wake up this morning and discover this could actually happen.
It will happen. And it's a good thing, because this is help Ukraine to defend itself. It defending not only themselves, it defending our democracy. Because otherwise, your sons will die in this war. Because Putin will not stop. Not after Ukraine, not after other countries. And if United States is thinking that they're gonna sit quietly and nothing gonna happen to them, it's already happened. Several of your people already dead. They dead in Yemen. I wonder how their families enjoying it. I don't think so. And maybe some of them keep praising Trump. Trump supported Putin, and Putin make it happen. He made it happen in Israel. All these people died because of him. And so is that. And this is just the beginning. Imagine what Putin is trading with Iran with when he buying those drones from them. What does he promising? Perhaps nukes? How would you enjoy several of American cities wiped out by Iran? Thanks to Putin? Well, keep supporting Putin, Mr. Carlson. And we will remember this guy, J.D. Vance, Ohio senator. So this guy is also a traitor to his country and a Putin's puppet, who tried to kill more Ukrainians. I wish you spread out my video with the footage of killed Ukrainians, for these people could see for themselves what's their stupidity, their corruption, and their treachery to their country done to these people. I want them to see that killed Ukrainian family in Kharkov. I want them to see the Ukrainian cities get bombed. Well, eventually it will come to your soil, as it came to Ukraine. And this guy is supporting Putin. Everything they say is complete lie. They're basically saying that Ukraine is a democratic country. Yes, Ukraine is a democratic country. And Zelensky is democratically elected president, which I proved in my videos many times. And no, the support to Ukraine will not prolong this war. The support to Ukraine and giving weapons to Ukraine will finish this war quickly, unless Ukraine will die. And the number 400,000 dead and wounded, it's for Russia, not for Ukraine. If you don't know your numbers, then you shouldn't open your mouth and yap for that kind of audience. Go and find out how many Ukrainians died. It's way, way, way less than Russians. But this is not the point. Ukraine did not start this war, and Ukraine cannot finish it. Because Russia will destroy Ukraine, and they're not even hiding it. It's still published. Those articles I talked in my video, Putin's original plan for Ukraine exposed, they still on the main Russian channel, RIA Novosti. One article was from 2021, another one from 2022, when they thought they're gonna capture Kiev in 3 days. This is fascist plan which Russia realizing on the occupied territories right now. And this means the death for Ukraine and Ukrainians. That is why they're gonna fight as much as they can, because otherwise they're gonna die. Many of them would be sent to gulags, the country will be destroyed, the whole name of Ukraine will be wiped out of the map of the planet. And these people, like I just showed you, Tucker Carlson and these men, they supporting Putin and they supporting to destruction and murder of Ukrainians.
And Zelensky tells them a story that his war is in the best interest of the whole of Ukraine. Now,
First of all, he didn't tell the story. He told how it is. Ukraine didn't attack anyone. Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014 and in 2022. This is not a story. Ukraine is defending itself.
Now, never mind that there are people within Ukraine protesting the draft.
And it's not his war, it's Putin's war. Zelensky didn't start the war. The war started in 2014 by Putin, and in 2022 it was full-scale invasion. Ukraine is defending itself.
Never mind that the average age of a soldier there is pushing 45.
You know what age of soldier in Russia now? They allow to draft officers even if they're 70 years old. So don't tell me about the average age of Ukrainian and so on. So they're completely repeating Russian propaganda word by word. This is disgusting to see. When people from democratic country who has no reason to lie, Carlson is intelligent and wealthy man, and so is Elon Musk. They absolutely have no reason to bend the knee to Russian dictator and spread his lies. So these two guys spreading Russian lies and propaganda. It's just so disgusting to see. I'm just really disgusted with that. And they talking about morals. How about killed Ukrainians all over the country? On 29th, for example, of December. All over the country. Maternity wards, hospitals, everything. And Russia was killing them and keep killing them and bombing infrastructure, and Putin admitting it himself. Yes, we're doing it, and smiles. And these guys are truly thinking. No, they're not truly thinking. They're just lying. And we will remember that. This is why I'm posting it on my channel. For we remember that. Because after Ukraine will win the war, these guys would say, oh, we never said that. It never happened. These are the facts. And this is the proof. I won't comment much anymore on that speech of Carlson. He's just working for his payment.
Quid pro quo.
Tucker. Next person who pro-Putin and pro-Russia, not pro-Russia because Putin is against Russia himself, pro-Putin is Douglas Macgregor. And my subscribers warned me about the man and asked me to look into him, and I did for a while. This is what I find out. Colonel Macgregor graduated from, as far as I find out, from the US Military Academy at West Point and received his PhD from the University of Virginia. That is why I was surprised that such a highly educated man said such stupid and wrong things about the war in Ukraine and about other things. For example, on NATO. In 2016 presentation to military students, Macgregor said that old alliances like NATO may vanish, arguing that it's time to re-examine US investments in allies, that they are doing too little to secure their own sovereign interests. And Cold War ended 27 years ago. So, of course, he didn't predict, apparently, Putin's full-scale invasion in Ukraine in 2022, which has proved him wrong. And by the way, in 2016, the war in Ukraine was going on for 2 years, and people in Slavyansk were murdered already, and thousands of people were dead. Eventually, in the 8 years of the war, on both sides, 14,000 people died. Yet, he's thinking we need to relax, forget about NATO, the only thing which holding Putin in place.
The Ukrainian nation is destroyed. Let's be frank. You had 500,000 Ukrainian dead in the Ukrainian armed forces.
What 500,000 Ukrainian dead? Where is the proof? On both sides died about 500,000. So he pulling out numbers out of nowhere. There is no proof of any of this. From Russia alone, from Russian side,
I don't know how many civilians have been killed. I don't know exactly how many wounded, but I know that you're looking at 500,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers.
That is a lie. About 500,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers. 500,000 dead and wounded together combined. And majority of them are Russians. Number one. And number two, we do know how many civilians dead. In several of my videos, this one about Donbass, and some others, I provided you a United Nations report. In 8 years after Russia attacked Ukraine between 2014 and 2021, total conflict-related civilian casualties was 3,404 people. So we do know. During that time, the most civilians were killed in 2014-2015 when Russian-backed separatists were trying to destroy Ukraine. 2,084 people and 955 people in 2014 and 2015. And Putin didn't care. In 2021, 25 civilians were killed, and Putin launched full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And in 2022, Putin killed 8,159 civilians in Ukraine. And in 2023, by July, 1,210. Way more than all these 8 years of the war. This is how many. And from February 24th, 2022, the beginning of full-scale invasion, to 30th of July, OHCHR recorded 26,015 civilian casualties in Ukraine, 9,369 killed, and 16,646 injured. So yes, we do know Mr. Macgregor, and if he doesn't, then he should go and find out before lying to American people. Sitting with such a smart and distinguished face, with such a sure voice, bluntly lying to people.
I don't know how many Ukrainians were really present in Ukraine when this began, because millions had fled long before the war began because of the corruption and lack of employment. So what is their population now down to? That is the population that lives under, theoretically, Ukrainian administration.
First of all, it's not theoretical Ukrainian administration, it's legally elected government of Ukraine, independent country of Ukraine. Second of all, we do know how many people lived in Ukraine. In 2021, before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, when the war was going on, since 2014, in Ukraine was almost 44 million people living. And no, they wasn't living in millions, their country, because of corruption or something. This is just first thing I found. No need even to go very far. So they saying in 2021 was 43.5 million people. Nevertheless, in 2022, millions left. And population was 39 million.7. And the current population of Ukraine in 2024 is 37.9, 3.5% increase from 2023. And I know because of what? It's because many people returned. Some of my friends who left Ukraine in 2022 returned back home because they have nowhere to go and they wanted to go back home. That's all. And now Ukraine has more weapons thanks to Western allies. They can defend some cities, even Kharkov for a lot of extent, which was bombed in 2022 every day by Russia. The population of Ukraine in 2023 was 36.7 million people, about 7.45% decline from 2022. And in 2022, 39.7 million, which is 8.8% decline from 2021. So millions of people left Ukraine. Some of them came back in 2024 and 2023. But they left because of the war Putin started, because he started to bombing indiscriminately civilian cities, leveling them. Everybody was whining about those cluster munitions on the battlefield. Oh God! Kharkiv, peaceful Russian-speaking, for the most part, and Ukrainian-speaking city in Ukraine, was bombed with cluster munitions from the day one. And if Mr. Macgregor doesn't know about this, he either lying or he's incompetent. After Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Macgregor appeared on 3 Fox News programs in February and early March to speak in support of Russia's actions. 3 days after the war began, he said, the battle in eastern Ukraine is really almost over, and predicted if Ukraine don't surrender in the next 24 hours, I suspect Russia will ultimately annihilate them. Macgregor said he believed Russia should be allowed to seize whatever parts of Ukraine it wanted. After one of his appearances, Macgregor comments were characterized by veteran Fox News Pentagon correspondent Jennifer Griffin as distorting and appeasement, and that he was begin an apologist for Putin. After Griffin's remarks, Tucker Carlson, who hosted Macgregor in 2 successive nights, remarked, unlike many of the so-called reporters you see on television, He's not acting secretly as a flag for Lloyd Austin at the Pentagon. No, Doug Macgregor is an honest man. I don't see him being honest because he's spreading Russian lies. By the way, Russian state television RT and VGTRK broadcast excerpts of Macgregor's second Carlson appearance basically on Russian TV, which included a characterization of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky as a puppet, that Russian forces has been too gentle in the early days of the invasion. Yeah, very gently they bombed with cluster ammunition Kharkov, for example. Civilian city. Yeah, it was very gentle. In the early days of the invasion, and that Russian President Vladimir Putin was being demonized by the United States and NATO. US Representative Liz Cheney said on Macgregor, this is Putin win of the GOP. And I think she's right. In a fourth appearance in early March, Macgregor said the ceasefire was close as Ukrainian forces had been grounded to bits. There is no question about that, despite what we report on our mainstream media. He also defended Russian invasion in an interview on the Grey Zone, saying Putin had taken great care with civilians and this was delaying his victory. And Putin's army massacred people in 2014, as you can see in my video. How stupid or corrupt a person must be to say that. To say what he said. How much need to lie to people to be able to say that? Even in 2014, in Slavyansk, they butchering people. After liberation of Bucha, Kherson, Izum, and many other places, right now they're bombing Kherson, which Russia technically annexed into Russia, so it's technically Russians supposed to be. Yet they're bombing them every day. And this is Kherson. It's not Kharkov. Kharkov they're bombing less now, but still quite a bit. And on the 29th of December, I showed you what they did. In July 2022, on Real America's Voice, he told Charlie Kirk that the war, with the exception of Kharkiv and Odessa, as far as the Russians are concerned, is largely over. There is no intention to do anything else, besides the Russians don't have a very large army. The nonsense that Putin wants to conquer all of the Ukraine was never true. And he's ever did in Minsk agreements was ask Russian speakers, Russian citizens inside Ukraine be treated equally before the law. That they will not penalized for being Russians. They were treated equally and they were not penalized for being Russians. This is another Putin's lie and propaganda I disproved. I showed you how many people in Crimea was worried about Russian language. 4 to 6% of people. For them it was concern in any way. In September, he again predicted on Carlson's show that this war may be over soon. And it was 2022, September 2022. And later in the months that Ukrainian army is bled white, tens of thousands of Ukrainian troops have been killed or wounded. Ukraine is really on the ropes. Liz Cheney tweeted in response, Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch, why do you continually put Douglas Macgregor on Fox News to spread Putin's propaganda and lies? This is absolutely not in America's interest. So Colonel Macgregor was wrong every single time, but he kept defending Putin. He is either a useful idiot or a traitor to his country, in my opinion. In either case, in my opinion, West Point should be ashamed of such a graduate. If you watched my videos about Crimea in 2014, you will clearly see that he is lying about everything. Either lying or he is on Putin's payroll. I don't see the point to discuss him any further. I disprove every single lie. I could go for hours disproving every single lie he said. I just don't see the point to doing that. How many times we have to catch person on lies to stop believing him? This is Jake Bro channel again. So this is Ukrainian information. This is how much Russia lost, dead and wounded. 388,000, 89,000 if to round it up, of troops. This is the losses of their warships, tanks and everything. So Ukraine is successfully destroying Russian army and all the military equipment Russia has, making America a safer place to live, because of Russian threat would be eliminated for decades, thanks to Ukraine. Let's talk about some more Putin's supporters from the United States. The convicted pedophile Scott Ritter, for example. What giving him credibility in the eyes of some people is that he's former United States Marine Corps intelligence officer and former United Nations Special Commission weapons inspector. But he's convicted sex offender, and I'll explain a little later why he went to Chechnya of all places. I will not talk too much about him because I didn't bother to research him all that much. But there is a good article by Euronews. Why do disgraced Americans like Scott Ritter spout pro-Putin's propaganda in Russia? And you can read about him and about few other people who is basically promoting Russia and Russian propaganda. Lies, disinformation, and meanwhile real journalists like Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich was arrested in Yekaterinburg and still in Russia. And some other, more than one American journalist is arrested and in Russia right now. If you're interested in Scott Ritter, there is a good investigation done by Professor Gerdes Explain. It's called the Scott Ritter Investigation, Agent Zelensky Part 1 Exposed. So you're welcome to see how Scott Ritter trying to create narrative that Zelensky is corrupt and this and that. You don't need to know all that much to find out that it isn't true, which Professor Gerdes showed. But in general, look at the situation. When Russia attacked Ukraine on February 24th, 2022, the war was already going on for 8 years before that, but the full-scale invasion started on this day. And I know my friends in Kiev, how they felt. How they felt when they getting bombed all of a sudden, like all of a sudden, out of the blue. They wake up at 5:30 in the morning and had to drag their children into bomb shelter, minding that you know where the bomb shelter is and this and that. If Zelensky is a piece of garbage, corrupt politician, which is a piece of garbage, corrupt politicians are stealing from their people, from their country, and betraying the interests of their country for the money, and so on. So if the person is that bad, why in the world, when he had a perfect offer, the war is already started, you don't know when you're gonna get bombed, and you will, because the war started, Kiev already getting bombed, the capital of Ukraine, where you are, is getting bombed. What's the best thing can happen to you? The offer from United States. Hop on the plane, take your family, and get out. And especially if, according to Scott Ritter, he has so many places. His Miami residences and whole bunch of things, which Zelensky can have as a successful actor who made a lot of movies and so on. If he has property somewhere, he can easily go there. And in United States, what's gonna happen to him? He's gonna live in a great country with an awesome laws and so on, democracy and everything, where everybody will jump around him, kiss him in the forehead. Oh, poor, poor president of poor Ukraine. Let's bring him everything on silver platter. He's upset as he is. Let's help him out. This is the best thing could happen to Zelensky is his family. And what Zelensky did, he stayed. And he going to the front, not sitting in a bunker like Putin. And he going in the hot spots like Bakhmut, like Avdiivka. He just recently came from there. Would piece of garbage of a human being who is corrupt politician do that? No. Because if they would have been a good person, they wouldn't have stolen from their country in the first place. This is all what you need to know about that. Normally, I don't discuss sexual preferences of other people. I don't even care about it. But in this case, it's relevant. What Professor Gerdes does not know, as many foreigners don't, that for convicted pedophile, who actually multiple times get caught and actually served the time in jail for being a pedophile, Chechnya is a haven. So Scott Ritter not only came to Russia, he came to Chechnya, which is the region Russia conquered, murdered, bombed Grozny in their capital into the ground and installed their puppet Kadyrov there. There is no even laws which are applicable in Russia working in Chechnya. When the women getting circumcisions in there, and the families deciding their fate, and there are so-called honorable killings of them, because they did something displeased their family. I have a video about that. When 4 women escaped Russia with the help of, escaped Chechnya, basically, which is part of Russia. 4 women escaped, young women, all legal age, with passports, legal citizens of Russian Federation, was detained on the border by the Russian border guards to wait until their parents showed up. And only with the help of human rights activists, they managed to escape. Otherwise, they would have been killed, like the one woman recently get killed in Chechnya. She just disappeared and nobody knows where she is, and most likely she killed by her family. But the point is, in that kind of Muslim part of Russia, it's okay when a 50, 60 years old policeman married a 12, 13 years old underage girls. This is fine in Chechnya. This is why Scott Ritter showed up in Chechnya and give credibility to Kadyrov, who trying to blackmail the world. Release sanctions on me, my family, and my horses, and I'll return a few POWs of Ukraine into Ukraine. And Scott Ritter gives him credibility. How disgusting. Pedophile in pedophile's haven. Another Putin supporter, Alex Jones, an American far-right radio show host and conspiracy theorist. Whole bunch of them popped up recently, with all the win-not lunacy theories. More than that, that American lowlife appeared on the most propagandist channel in Russia, on the Vladimir Solovyov, the Russian win-not lunatic, who used to be a journalist, who was saying that, oh, it's not good if Russia will never attack Crimea, need to be an idiot to do that. And now he's completely flipping in the air and changed his shoes during flipping in the air and started to support in the war and talking about nuking United States, nuking Europe, destroying Germany, destroying United States, most apologetic Russian propagandist. And what? Alex Jones appeared there and started to say that he believes globalists are controlling America and preventing true freedom, where he collaborates with Russian journalists and so on. You can watch it on the channel NFKRZ, which is Roman, Russian guy. This is what Alex Jones said on the Solovyov show.
A very transactional person. So he looks at Russia, it's like Melania. He sees it as a woman. I mean, I know how Trump operates. He sees Russia as a gorgeous, beautiful woman he wants to be with.
Let him cook, I guess. I don't know.
And the CIA goes, no. You're not getting in business with her. We're going to kill her and eat her. And so they're cannibals. Trump wants to have children with Russia.
I think you get the idea. This is another Putin's puppet, Oliver Stone, who even made a documentary about Putin. I couldn't even watch this with Lex Friedman broadcast. If you want to watch real broadcast of person who actually knows something about Russia and Ukraine, watch Stephen Kotkin, not the Oliver Stone, which pretend to be a journalist of some sort. Yet he completely swallowed hook, line, and sinker of Putin's propaganda and repeating it to American people. In the situations when there is a genocide, when there is a war, and propagandists getting charged, as well as people who actually took the gun and go to the front. These people contributing to Russian propaganda. On their hands, there is also blood. On their microphone, there is also blood of Russian and Ukrainian people, for example, who died in this war because of these guys promoted Putin, appeased Putin, enabled Putin, and make his voice heard. Make people believe in what Putin said. Because Putin is propagandist and KGB agent who taught in the university how to manipulate people and lie to people. And this guy, pretending to be a journalist, basically without any proofs or any confirmation, just swallowed the lie of foreign dictator and spreading it. I remember the time when I watched movie with Steven Seagal in Russia, and I liked it. Now, this piece of human garbage from America, from democratic country, also sold his soul for Putin's propaganda. Just because he couldn't make it enough in America, he has to bend the knee to the Russian dictator and spew his propaganda, especially after Russia killed POWs in Yelenivka, in the prisoners' camp, and trying to blame it on Ukraine. He showed up there. What kind of actor know anything about what happened there? And trying to give a credibility to Russian lies. We will remember them all. And several others, like Simon Shuster, a reporter for Time magazine, who recently published an article about Zelensky. Very made-up propaganda. I told about him in my video about Time magazine and so on. So he was supporting Putin for years, even since 2014. Many of them back then was already supporting Putin. Welcome to the new Crimea, whether you like it or not, he wrote. Pay the coffee for coffee in Russian rubles in 2014. So this was the people who were supporting Putin for a while. On the bright side, in America there are not many traitors. That's about it what I show you in this show. Majority of both parties are supporting Ukraine. At this point in time, I think this represents very well what is happening. Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And Trump said, Mr. Putin, invade our NATO allies. This was Trump was doing since the day one he get elected. He was undermining every NATO allies, every friends of the United States, even neighbor like Canada. There was almost nobody left who he didn't insult, except for Russian dictator Putin, who he has great admiration, and I showed it to you in my previous video. How much Trump and Carlson and so on admiring Russian dictator. This is what they want for United States. So they are betraying the interests of their country and supporting foreign dictator. And this is how Europe sees Trump and his MAGA followers. You do know Putin is really in charge of you, right? Asking Hiking Felina. This is funny, but this is true. Of course, Trump has his own interests. It's not like he likes Putin and wanted Putin to be great. It just aligns with his own personal interests to stay in power forever like Putin. And we already seen in Russia what's happening. You're welcome to immigrate to Russia. There is already a ready dictator there, in power. Enjoy your life there. Why not? In the end, 2 words about Canada. Canada is supporting Ukraine, by the way. And majority of Canadians are. And yet, even in Canada, there are Putin's puppets. And one of them I am watching since like long ago, even in earlier days of full-scale invasion, and even before that, during the Russian attacks on Ukraine. Canadian professor website helps Russia spread disinformation, says US State Department, and they are right, because I checked that site, and I checked his think tank, so-called think tank, and it was spreading Russian lies since 2014 and even earlier, perhaps. This is Michel Chossudovsky, University of Ottawa professor. And not only Facebook followers, he has a global research institute, kind of global research think tank. And this guy was spreading Russian disinformation and so on, and conspiracy theories and whole bunch of other things. So even being a professor doesn't mean that you know things, and doesn't mean that you are not lying to people. And I'm ashamed that this guy is Canadian. And luckily, Canadian government listens to Canadian citizens. And when I wrote a letter to my Prime Minister and talked to my MLA and said that Russia Today should be banned in Canada and several other things, I demanded it in the first days, literally on the first day of the full-scale invasion, and the next day after. And my government listened to me, and they imposed sanctions on Russia, banned Russia Today, and dealing also with this Sputnik and so on, Kremlin propaganda in my country, Canada. So to know what will happen if you move to Russia, this is post of Rustem Agdamov. Religious family from Canada moved to Russia in the beginning of 2024. And right away, seen the serious problems. Russian bank left them without money to live on, because Canadians can't prove that they legally have obtained those money. They brought that money from Canada with them. And if the father is still trying to pretend that he's agree with his decision and thinking it was a good idea to move to Russia, and praising the strong Russian law about money laundering, his wife is saying that she's very disappointed and she's ready to jump on the plane and leave. And this Canadian told in the past that his family in Canada thought he's crazy because he decided to move to Russia. And they were right. their accounts frozen, and so on. These are Canadian lunatics who decided it's a good idea to move to Russia. Traditional family values. When Putin and his lovers having children from him to the right and to the left. Medvedev's drinking, and Lavrov has extra family. 2 families at the same time. Bravo! So much for family values. And Christian Russian Orthodox Church, I have a special video about it. Led by the FSB officers for the previous patriarch and nowadays patriarch, former KGB officers and so on. And they spread in Russian propaganda. Well, good for you. Enjoy Russia. Enjoy your sons getting killed in Russian army. Good luck to you. Don't worry, we are in the end of our video. And I want to go back to this article which I showed to you in the part 1. Putin's Friends in Europe by Frederick Wislau. And in the end, he's proposing certain steps which need to be done. And I kind of implemented them and a little bit developed them and put my own perspective on this. So I'm not only criticizing, I'm providing the solution. I'm proposing the solutions. How to deal with it, what needs to be done to defend democracy. And let's talk about it for a few minutes. This is my video, by the way. Defend Ukraine, defeat Putin, choose unity. This is the shortest what I can say about it. So what can we do? First of all, fight Russian propaganda. And my channel is to help you with that. Stop all media from Russia in the country. Ban the Russian Orthodox Church as agents of the FSB in the country. I have a whole video about Russian Orthodox Church where you can find out about Russian Patriarch, which is literally former FSB KGB agent, and so on. So you're welcome to research that. Educate people about the war in Ukraine, the USSR, Russia, and Putin's aggression in Ukraine. This is why I created my channel, to help people and save you 9 years of your life to find out about stuff like that. So you didn't fall for the stupid things Tucker Carlson says. I don't know why we're supposed to think about Ukraine. Because you're thinking about your own country. And for the peanuts on the dollar, you defend the United States from the Russian threat. And defend NATO. For that you need to recognize populism challenge. European, USA and other leaders must acknowledge that addressing domestic populism poses a significant challenge. Anti-establishment politics are widespread across Europe, and even in the United States, and even some little bit in Canada, with political tides favoring such movements, as seen in elections in Germany, France, Netherlands and Italy, as you could see in my previous video, and especially movements anti-NATO and so on, most of it paid by Putin, because NATO for Putin is a threat. Not for Russia, for Putin personally. Because Putin cannot go and grab countries because they are members of NATO. And they defended by NATO. And Putin knows he cannot win from NATO. But he can do other things, and I'll probably make another video about that. Address covert Russian influence. Russia often directly causes the rise of populism in the Western countries and benefits from it. Covert Russian actions supporting insurgent parties, spreading disinformation, undermine the democratic foundations of Western societies. And as I showed to you in the previous part 1, that Russia literally inviting foreign politicians and even foreign parties to Russia, paid for the expenses, and taught them how to disturb and disrupt the life in your countries. How to be against your government, because it benefits Putin. Why it benefits Putin? It's because he cannot create a good life in Russia. He too much like corruption, stealing money and so on. That is why he need to make life in other countries worse, so Russians didn't look abroad. That is why he had to squash Ukraine, because if Ukraine will start trade agreements and started to be less corrupt and trade with European Union, which this was the question about in 2014, only trade with European Union, nothing more. There was no question about Ukraine joining NATO or European Union, none of it. Ukraine would live better, and Russians would find out that a corrupt leader like Putin isn't good enough. This is why Putin is so afraid of Ukraine succeeding, of being democratic and good country. Transparent political financing. Governments should strengthen regulations on political party funding by prohibiting the acceptance of money from foreign organizations. Increased transparency requirements for funding should be introduced to inform voters about financial backers. Law enforcement priorities. Law enforcement agencies should prioritize investigating Russian covert support for populist parties. Countermeasures must be taken to stop such support, and these actions must be made public. All Russian agents of influence and open Putin supporters with Russian origin who took part in pro-Putin rallies, for example, especially who literally took part in pro-Putin rallies, should be stripped of their citizenship, in my opinion, because they lied on the application form and had no intention to become US, European, or Canadian citizens, and immediately deported to Russia. Combat illegal money transfers. Stricter implementation of national corruption and money laundering legislation is essential to counter illegal money transfers. So this is roughly a few ideas which I am giving to you to be useful to defend democracy. And don't get discouraged, please. And don't think that I'm attacking Republicans. In this case, they are guilty. They supporting Putin by allowing Johnson and Trump to prevent the decision to help Ukraine. And it has to be stopped. And majority of Republican Party, the good people who actually want it to happen and want to help Ukraine, should write to their politicians and demand that they listen to you and do what you said, not what they think they should do, because Trump told them to. This is number one. Number two, many people fell for that kind of cult-like things because they were used and manipulated with Russian and Soviet propaganda, which was developed for years to manipulate people. It's like people get sucked into the cult. Many of them not because they're stupid, it's just because they were vulnerable. Or because they were too honest and they didn't think that their politicians gonna lie to them. Bluntly lie. They don't lie to other people because they're good people. That's why they didn't expect that they're gonna be lied to. But nevertheless, Democrats also, please don't be too cocky. I am not pleased that with several 100 million people living in your country, many of them are Democrats, many of them are Republicans. You couldn't find in the last 4 years a candidate who could unite your country after Trump did a lot to divide you. Do not let anyone divide you. Please remember that first of all, you are Americans. And only after that, you're a member of one party or another. Because this is exactly what Putin wants, to divide you. To divide your country and weaken it by division. It is very hard to find common ground sometimes, but you have to do it. Putin already made Russia great again, and now he's improving Ukraine. Wonder who is next. Stop Putin, help Ukraine, learn the truth, and stay informed. Thank you for watching. See you later.